I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I always considered my marriage to Sarah to be solid, perhaps even enviable. We met in college, and it felt like we were two halves of a whole. Friends would say we were the couple that had it all. But looking back now, I can see how naive I was. The signs were there, but I chose to ignore them. I kept telling myself that everything was fine, even as whispers of doubt crept into my mind. Sarah had always been a strong personality, brash, outspoken, and let's be honest, a bit of a diva. I loved her for it, but lately things started to shift. It was subtle at first. She'd come home later from work, her phone constantly buzzing with messages. I remember asking her about it once, trying to sound casual, and she rolled her eyes as if I were being ridiculous. "It's just work, Jake, relax," she snapped. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. But it wasn't just the late nights. It was the change in her demeanor, too. She had this new air of confidence that I found both alluring and intimidating. She would spend hours getting ready to go out with her friends, and when she came home, she always had that just had fun glow about her. Instead of feeling grateful for her vibrant spirit, I felt annoying anxiety growing inside me. Was she hiding something? Was she, in fact, lying to me? Then came the night that changed everything. I was working late on a project and happened to glance over at her phone while she was in the shower. I don't know what compelled me to look, but I couldn't help it. There it was, a message from a guy named Mike. The text was innocuous enough on its surface. "Can't wait to see you tonight." My heart sank. I forced myself to breathe as I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a coworker. Perhaps it was just a harmless friendship. But the uneasy feeling in my gut wouldn't let it go. I knew I had to find out more. I started piecing together the little things: her new schedule, the sudden influx of new friends, and the vague excuses about late meetings or study groups. Each piece of the puzzle added to this chaotic picture of betrayal. After about a week of digging through texts, social media, and even asking a few mutual friends casually, I finally caught a break. Sarah had planned a girls' night this particular Saturday, and I decided to follow her. I parked a few blocks away from the restaurant she said they'd be at and waited. I felt sick to my stomach, but deep down, I needed to know the truth. When I saw her walk in hand with Mike, shock coursed through my veins. They were laughing, leaning in close to each other, too close for comfort. I wasn't just a bystander. I felt like I was being punched in the gut. My mind raced, struggling to process the betrayal. I couldn't believe my wife was cheating on me, and with someone I barely knew. The facade of our perfect life shattered in that moment. I watched them for what felt like an eternity, my heart hammering in my chest. They shared drinks, exchanged flirtatious glances, and I couldn't believe how easily she'd slipped into a world where I didn't exist. The realization hit me hard, and the weight of betrayal began to crush me. I knew. I had to confront her, but I also knew that it would change everything. That night, as I drove home, I felt a mix of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. I was furious at Sarah for doing this, but also at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. It was time for the confrontation, and I was ready to let her know I wasn't going down without a fight. And so, I steeled myself for the storm that was about to unfold. I was done being a passive observer in my own life. If she thought she could outsmart me, she had another thing coming. I would let her believe she was in control until the trap closed. I waited until Sarah got home, pacing back and forth in the living room like a caged animal. The air felt thick with tension as the clock ticked away the seconds. I replayed the image of her with Mike in my mind, and it only fueled the fire inside me. I was determined to confront her, to get answers, and to ensure she knew exactly how much she had hurt me. When she finally walked through the door, she was glowing, her cheeks flushed. From what I could only assume had been a night of too much laughter and too many drinks, she looked radiant, but it only made my blood boil. "Jake, you're still up," she said, her voice bright. "I thought you'd be in bed by now." "Yeah, well, I couldn't sleep," I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered slightly as she took a seat on the couch, her eyebrows knitting together in confusion. "What's wrong?" I took a deep breath, summoning all my courage. "I saw you with Mike tonight." The color drained from her face, and for a split second I saw panic in her eyes, a fleeting moment that felt like a small victory. What do you mean? She stammered, trying to feign innocence. Jake, you know I wouldn't. Cut the crap, Sarah, I snapped, feeling the anger bubble over. I saw you two at the restaurant, holding hands and laughing like it was some secret rendezvous. Don't lie to me. She stood up, her face shifting from shock to indignation. How could you? You followed me, that's so invasive. It's invasive. You're the one cheating. I don't care about being invasive, I care about the truth. My voice cracked, a mix of fury and hurt spilling out. She folded her arms, turning defensive. You're making it sound worse than it is. It was just a friendly dinner, we were discussing work. You have no idea what you're talking about. I shook my head, incredulous. Friendly dinner? Is that why you were giggling like school kids? Look, I know what I saw, Sarah. You can't keep lying to me. She opened her mouth to respond, but then paused, clearly trying to formulate an excuse. I could see the wheels turning in her head. Okay, fine. Yes, I had dinner with him, but it was nothing. You have to believe me, Jake. I love you. I would never jeopardize our marriage. Love, really? Because you seem to be doing a great job of showing the opposite. I shot back, feeling the sting of betrayal wash over me. It's almost laughable how you think you can spin this. The tension in the room was suffocating. She looked hurt, but there was a hardened edge to her expression that I hadn't seen before. It was like a wall had come up and she wasn't the Sarah I once knew. Maybe you should think about your own actions, she fired back, her voice cold. You're always so busy with work, you barely pay attention to me anymore. Maybe if you had. What came next was a jumbled mess of excuses and accusations. She brought up my late nights, how I'd been distant, how I didn't appreciate her. It was as if she was trying to justify her betrayal by placing blame on me. I felt my blood boil, but somewhere inside me I recognized this was her last-ditch effort to escape responsibility. Is that what this is all about? I countered, the hurt seeping into my voice. You thought that cheating on me would be a way to get back at me. You're better than this, Sarah. I thought you were better than this. Her face twisted with rage and she shot back. You have no idea what I've been through. You don't know how lonely I've felt. Loneliness. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had poured my heart and soul into our marriage. But now I was the villain in her story. So what? You thought sleeping with someone else was the answer, that's your solution. I didn't plan for it to happen, it just did, she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. It's not like I wanted to hurt you. I felt a surge of sadness mix with my anger, my heart aching as reality settled in. The woman I had loved and trusted was standing before me, and yet she felt like a stranger. You did hurt me, Sarah. You did this to us. You betrayed my trust, and I don't know how we can come back from this. The tears that filled her eyes did little to soften my heart. I realized then that she was not sorry for what she had done. She was only sorry that she had been caught. I didn't want to be the bad guy in this story. I wanted to work through our problems, but I could feel the foundation of our relationship crumbling beneath us. As the confrontation reached its peak, I felt a shift within me. I was no longer the passive partner, waiting for her to come around. I was done letting her play games. I needed to take control of my life, however painful that might be. It was time for me to decide what came next, and I knew deep down that the road ahead would not be easy. The confrontation left me feeling hollow. I had hoped for a moment of clarity, a breakthrough that could potentially mend the rift between us, but instead, I felt the chasm growing wider. As Sarah's tears fell, I realized I was trapped in a cycle of blame and deflection. She wasn't just lying to me about her affair, she was lying to herself. Jake, please, she pleaded, her voice shaking. I never meant for any of this to happen. Can't we talk about it, work through it? Work through what, Sarah? I snapped, exasperation spilling over. You've already made your choice by being with him. You think a few tears will magically erase what you've done. You want to talk, fine. Let's talk about how you've shattered everything we built. She stepped back, crossing her arms defensively. This is not fair. You've been so wrapped up in your work and your projects. I felt ignored. I shook my head. You think that justifies cheating? I've been trying to provide for us, to build a life together. I thought we were in this as a team, and now you're telling me that playing the victim is the solution. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's eyes were cast down, and I could see the gears turning in her mind, desperate for a way out of the corner she had painted herself into. Meanwhile, I felt like the walls were closing in on me. This wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about the entire foundation of our relationship crumbling in front of my eyes. "I don't know what else to say," she finally muttered, her words barely above a whisper. There was defeat in her tone, but also a flicker of resolve. "I love you, Jake. I do. I just— Love isn't enough when you take that love for granted." I cut in sharply. "How can you claim to love me while being intimate with another man? You've crushed my trust, and that's not something that can be brushed aside with a heartfelt confession." I watched as the weight of realization hit her. It wasn't just about what she'd done, it was about the lack of respect she'd shown for our vows, for our life together. "Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was selfish," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I didn't think about how it would hurt you." "Selfish? That's an understatement," I shot back, feeling anger swell in my chest again. "You didn't just hurt me, you betrayed our marriage. You didn't think of the consequences of your actions, did you?" "No," she said, her voice now laced with desperation. "I didn't. I was caught up in the moment and it just happened. I never meant for it to get this far." "What did you think would happen, that you could have your cake and eat it too?" I asked, my voice rising. "Do you think I'm just going to forgive this, that it will be easy to move past?" "I don't expect forgiveness overnight," she replied, finally breaking down into sobs. I don't want to lose you." In that moment I felt a flicker of sympathy for her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the overwhelming weight of betrayal. "You already have, Sarah. You can't unring this bell. You have to understand that trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's not easily repaired." We stood there in silence for what felt like an eternity, the reality of our situation sinking in. I could see her processing the enormity of her actions, but part of me wondered if she truly grasped how deep this ran. I was heartbroken, but I was also done playing the victim. I had to take control of my life moving forward. "Look, I don't know what happens next," I began, forcing myself to remain calm. "But know this, I'm not going to pretend everything is fine. I need time to think. I need to figure out what I want." "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It means you need to take a step back and reflect on what you've done. I'm not saying it's over, but I can't just sweep this under the rug. I need to see how serious you are about fixing this and if I can ever trust you again." Her expression shifted from despair to a flicker of hope. "What if I swear to end things with Mike? I will do anything to prove my love for you." I held up my hand, stopping her short. "That's not enough, Sarah. You need to understand that fixing this goes beyond just cutting ties. It's about rebuilding trust, and that's going to take time, if it can even be done." I turned away, the weight of the conversation pressing heavily on my shoulders. I wanted to believe that we could find our way back to each other, but I also knew it would take a monumental effort from both of us. As I walked away, I realized how much this moment would define my future. I needed to think clearly about my next steps. It was time to lay out a plan, not just for revenge, but for my own emotional survival. I had to regain my power and figure out how to move forward, with or without her. The next few days would be crucial, and my mind was racing with possibilities. I could either wallow in pain or take control of my narrative. As I stared out the window into the night, I felt something shift inside me. I was no longer the man who would sit idly by and accept betrayal. I was ready to fight back, even if it meant waging war on the very foundations of my marriage. The next few days were a blur. I was engulfed in a storm of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. I oscillated between wanting to confront Sarah about her betrayal and needing space to process what had happened. I couldn't shake off the image of her with Mike, laughing and sharing intimacy that should have been reserved for me. That betrayal was a wound that would take much longer than a few days to heal. I decided to channel my energy into something productive. I started hitting the gym more often, lifting weights, running, trying to clear my mind. Exercise became my escape, a way to release the pent-up anger and frustration. Each drop of sweat felt like a small victory against the pain that threatened to consume me. I poured myself into my workouts, determined to emerge stronger both physically and mentally. But while I was lifting weights and pushing my limits, Sarah was at home, trying to navigate the remains of our relationship. I could feel her eyes on me, watching my every move with a mix of remorse and desperation. It was unsettling. Every time I came home from the gym, she would be there, waiting for me to acknowledge her, hoping for a sign that I was willing to reconcile. But I wasn't ready. I set boundaries. I told her I needed my own space, a chance to think without her hovering over me. I started keeping my phone close, replying to friends who offered their support and finding comfort in their company. I didn't want to talk to Sarah about my feelings right now. I needed to sort through the chaos inside my head before I could communicate with her effectively. Then, as I navigated this turbulent period, an idea for revenge began to form. Not just revenge for the sake of it, but a way to reclaim my power, my identity, and ultimately my life. I wanted to show Sarah that I was not someone to be taken for granted. I would let her feel the weight of her actions, and I would do it in a way that didn't involve petty arguments or childish tactics. I wanted my plan to be deliberate, calculated, and with purpose. I took a deep breath and began formulating my strategy. First, I decided to focus on myself, a self-improvement plan to rebuild my life. I started dressing better, taking more care of my appearance, and even signed up for a few new classes. I wanted to rediscover who I was outside of being Sarah's husband. I signed up for a photography class that I had always shown interest in but never pursued. The thought of capturing images through a lens thrilled me and provided a creative outlet I desperately needed. Next, I began to reestablish connections with friends. I reached out to a few old buddies whom I hadn't seen in a while, inviting them over for drinks and catching up. It felt refreshing to be around people who genuinely cared about me, who knew nothing about the turmoil I was experiencing at home. They allowed me to laugh, to forget, if only for a little while, the heartache Sarah had caused. But there was more. I began to plan how I would expose Sarah's betrayal in a way that would make her realize just how foolish she had been. I intended to let her see me moving on, thriving, and living my life without her. I wanted to demonstrate that her choices had consequences. I wasn't going to sit back and let her make me feel like I was the one who had failed. One evening, I told Sarah I was going out with friends. I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes as she asked, "Where are you going? What time will you be back?" Her sudden need for details was almost amusing. I replied casually, "Just grabbing some drinks. I'll be fine." As I left the house, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I had arranged to meet my friend Mike, yes, the same Mike who had been involved with Sarah. I wanted to confront him, but also to show him that I wasn't afraid. I had learned he was also seeing the repercussions of this affair, and I wanted to see what he had to say for himself. When I arrived at the bar, I spotted him seated at a corner table, looking just as guilty as I felt. "Hey, man," I greeted him, choosing my words carefully. "Mind if I join you?" Sure," he stammered, clearly caught off guard. I slid into the seat across from him and we sat in an awkward silence for a moment. Cut the crap, Mike," I said, leaning in. "You know why I'm here." A nervous laugh escaped his lips. "Yeah, I guess I do. Look, Jake, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. It was just a mistake." "A mistake?" I echoed, feeling the anger bubbling back up. "You think cheating with my wife is a mistake?" "It's not some drunken slip-up. It's a conscious choice. You knew she was married." "Dude, I didn't think she was serious about you," he said, backpedaling. "She kept saying things were tough between you two. I didn't know it was that deep." "And that's the problem with both of you," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "You play games with people's feelings, believing you can just walk away without consequences. But you can't. Sarah and I may have our issues, but that doesn't excuse what you did." Mike leaned back, seemingly intimidated by my resolve. "I get it, I really do, but I did mean to hurt you." "Intentions don't matter, Mike. You didn't care about the fallout, you just saw a chance and took it." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "I'm moving on from Sarah, and I suggest you do the same. You don't get to waltz in and out of people's lives without facing the music." As I finished, I could see his face pale. There was a tension in the air, an unspoken acknowledgement that I wasn't the victim anymore. I was reclaiming my power, taking control of my narrative. When I left the bar that night, I felt lighter. I had confronted Mike, stood my ground, and made it clear that I wouldn't be a doormat for anyone. The next step was to confront Sarah again, but this time I would be coming from a position of strength, ready to show her how serious I was about moving forward, whether that meant together or apart. Revenge, in this case, wasn't just about getting even. It was about redefining my own path, and for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. For whatever came next, returning home that night felt different. I stepped into the house with a renewed sense of confidence, my heart still racing from my conversation with Mike. I had confronted him, faced the reality of my situation, and felt empowered for the first time since discovering Sarah's betrayal. As I walked in, the silence felt almost oppressive, but I was determined to follow through on my plan. Sarah was still up, sitting on the couch with a blanket draped around her shoulders. She looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy from crying. Part of me felt a flicker of sympathy, but I quickly pushed it aside. I couldn't let her emotional state sway me from my resolve. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Out with friends," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I needed some time away. Her eyes searched mine, looking for answers, perhaps even for a sign of weakness. "Jake, can we talk? I really want to explain everything." I took a deep breath and sat down across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. "You've had your chance to explain, Sarah, and honestly, I don't want to go in circles about this anymore. Please, I need you to listen. I'm so sorry for everything. I made a terrible mistake," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "It was just a moment of weakness. I was feeling so lonely and I didn't think it would go this far." I held up my hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "You keep saying that, but it doesn't change the fact that you actively chose to cheat on me. You didn't just trip and fall into bed with Mike. You made a decision to betray our trust." Her expression morphed into something that resembled desperation. I know, but I want to fix this. I want to show you I can change." "Change?" I laughed bitterly. "You think a few words can erase the damage you've done? It's going to take more than that, Sarah." She shifted, biting her lip. "What do you want from me? How can I prove that this was a mistake? I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut ties with him, I swear." "Cutting ties isn't enough. You need to understand that trust is a fragile thing. Once broken, it doesn't just magically heal with promises," I said, my voice even but firm. "You have to show me you mean it, but I need to be honest with you. I'm not sure I can ever trust you again." The reality of my words hung heavy in the air. Sarah's face fell, and I could see the dawning realization that hit her. This wasn't just about us getting back together. It was about the fact that I was ready to walk away if necessary. "Jake, please don't say that. I can't lose you," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe you should have thought about that before sleeping with someone else." I shot back, feeling the anger bubble up again. "You've created this chaos, and now you need to deal with the consequences." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of my words lingering in the air. I could feel Sarah grappling with her emotions, the realization of what she had done settling in. "Are you really going to just throw us away?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What about everything we've built together?" I sighed, my heart heavy. "I'm not throwing anything away, Sarah. You did that. I loved you and I still do, but I can't ignore the betrayal. You need to understand that this isn't just about you and me anymore. It's about trust and respect." Her eyes filled with tears again, and although a small part of me wanted to comfort her, I resisted. I needed to stand my ground. "I need time to think about everything," I continued, "to decide if this can be salvaged. But right now, I'm not sure if I can go back to who we were." "Will you at least think about it?" she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I'll show you I can be better. I'll do whatever it takes." "Thinking about it doesn't mean I'll change my mind," I replied honestly. "I need to see real change, not just promises. You have to understand this is a two-way street. If I'm to let you back in, you need to be truly committed to fixing what you broke." There was a flicker of hope in her eyes, but I couldn't let that sway me. I needed to be strong for myself. "I'm going to take some time. For myself. I don't know how long that will be, but you need to respect it." "Jake," she started, but I cut her off. "Please, just let me have this," I said, my voice steady. I could see her processing everything, and as I stood up to leave the room, I felt a mix of relief and dread. I had made my stance clear, but the path ahead was murky. I didn't know whether Sarah would genuinely change or if this was just another round of manipulation. In the following days, I focused on myself more than ever. I kept up with my gym routine and my photography classes, immersing myself in activities that made me feel alive again. I started to feel that sense of identity returning, a reminder that I was more than just Sarah's husband. I was Jake, with my own dreams, interests, and goals. Meanwhile, Sarah tried to reach out, sending texts filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. I read them but often didn't respond. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't going to be a quick fix. I needed to see her actions, not just her words. I was evolving, growing, into someone who wouldn't accept being treated as an afterthought. As I navigated this turbulent chapter in my life, I felt a shift inside me. I was reclaiming my narrative, taking control of my feelings, and deciding what I wanted for my future. I didn't know where that path might lead, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next, whether it meant healing together or moving on separately. I was no longer waiting for Sarah to catch up. I was on my own journey now, and I was determined to make it count. The weeks turned into a blur of self-reflection and personal growth. I kept my distance from Sarah, giving her space but also holding her accountable. I could tell she was trying, but her efforts sometimes felt hollow, like she was checking boxes rather than genuinely committing to change. She'd clean up around the house more, make dinner, and send me messages that seemed rehearsed. I would acknowledge her attempts but remained cautious. I wasn't about to let a few gestures sway my resolve. I continued to immerse myself in my photography. I started capturing moments around the city, using my camera as a way to express the tumult of emotions I was feeling. There was something cathartic about being behind the lens, framing my world while simultaneously distancing myself from the chaos of my personal life. I found solace in the art, creating images that told stories without words. Each photo felt like a snapshot of my journey, beautiful, raw, and often painful. One afternoon, I decided to take a trip out of town, seeking inspiration in nature. I drove to a nearby state park, eager to explore the trails and capture the beauty around me. The fresh air and stunning landscapes filled me with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. As I hiked, I reflected on my life, my relationship with Sarah, and the lessons I had learned through this ordeal. I realized that I was growing stronger, more resilient. I had faced betrayal head-on, and rather than crumbling, I had chosen to rise above it. I had learned to prioritize my own happiness, understanding that my self-worth wasn't defined by someone else's actions. Upon returning home, I found Sarah waiting for me in the living room. As soon as I walked in, she stood up, her eyes hopeful but wary. "Hey." I nodded, looking at her carefully. "Hey, I've been doing a lot of thinking about us," she started, her voice measured. I held up my hand. "Before we dive into that, I want to share something first." She looked taken aback but nodded. "Okay." "I've been reflecting on everything that happened," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I've realized that I need to prioritize my own happiness. I've found a new passion for photography, something I've wanted to explore for a long time, and it's been helping me rediscover who I am." Her expression shifted, and I wasn't sure how she would take this. "That's great, Jake. I'm glad you're finding something you enjoy." I continued, "But in the process, I've also realized that I can't ignore what happened between us. I can't pretend like everything's fine when it's not. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. And I don't know if I can get back to where we were." Sarah's face fell, and I could see the pain in her eyes. "I understand. I really do. I've been working on myself too, trying to understand my actions and the reasons behind them. I just want a chance to prove to you that I can be better." I nodded, acknowledging her efforts but feeling the weight of uncertainty. "I appreciate that, but it's not enough. I need to see action, not just words. I want you to truly understand the gravity of what you've done. It's going to take more than just saying you're sorry. You need to show me." "Jake, I'm willing to do whatever it takes," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "I know you are," I replied softly. "Right now, I need to focus on myself. I need time to decide whether I want to continue this relationship or move forward separately. I've realized that I deserve to prioritize my happiness, and I hope you'll understand that." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't want to lose you either, but I can't stay in a relationship that feels broken. I need to know that you're committed for real, not just when it's convenient," I said firmly. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken words and lingering emotions. But I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had made my intentions clear. I was standing up for myself, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. In the days that followed, we both began to adjust to the new normal. Sarah started attending counseling sessions and began to take an honest look at herself. I focused on my photography and pushing the boundaries of my passion, showcasing my work in a small gallery. As I stepped out into the world, I felt empowered to embrace my independence and pursue the life I wanted. Eventually, the conversation about our relationship came up again. We talked openly about our feelings, our fears, and the possibility of moving forward together or apart. I could see that Sarah was genuinely trying, but I also knew that I had to protect my heart. I couldn't rush into forgiveness. It would take time, if it ever happened at all. Through it all, I learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and self-worth. I realized that I could survive betrayal and that I had the strength to rebuild my life on my own terms. Whether Sarah and I would reconcile or go our separate ways remained to be seen, but I was ready for whatever future awaited me. In the end, I understood that life is unpredictable and love can be messy. But I also learned that healing begins from within, and sometimes moving forward means letting go. I was ready to embrace my journey, knowing that I would emerge stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next.